and welcome to an update of the to fluff or not to fluff experiment. So you remember we started last week where we added about 120 worms to each bin, and I said I was going to mark one of the bins. So this one has an F on it standing for fluff. So this is the bin that we're designating to turn the material over once a week when I feed. Let's see how these guys have settled in. If you recall, we fed them a little bit in one corner, although now I don't remember exactly which corner it was, but that's okay. Since this is the bin that I'm going to turn over, I'm going to find it. But the material feels moist, feels nice. The wormies look lively, and there are no smells, which is how I like it. And oh, here it is. Here is the place where we fed. Right here. Some of the worms have made their way to this area. So I'm just going to turn the material over like I do every week. Everything feels good. So let's see. So we fed there. So we'll go to a different area. Normally I'd like to, when I pocket feed, I like to go to the corners and go around clockwise, and sometimes also feed in the center. But this is a rather large bin, and since I only have 120 worms in here, I will also include the halfway mark. So I'll go 1, then 2, then 3, and then 4, and continue on this way. So since we fed here, I'm going to now feed here. Now there's plenty of bedding, so I don't need to add bedding right now. And I don't need to add buffer, because when I made the bedding originally, I put in lots of buffer. So they have what they need for now. This is going to be our official first week. This is just 2.5 ounces of food. I weighed it out, and I'm just going to cover this up. But what I am going to do is mark it so I don't forget. So just a little piece of paper. I'll know that this is where I fed, and then I'll go clockwise from here on end. So this bin has been fluffed up, it's been marked, and it's been fed. So let's go over to the other bin. So here is our second bin, and we make sure that there's nothing here marking it, which means this one is not going to get turned over. But I am going to just peek in and see how these guys are doing. So they're not crawling, which is good. So we'll just go ahead and feed these guys up. Now, one of the reasons that pocket feeding is so good, it helps prevent you from overfeeding. Because if you feed one pocket, come back the next week, feed another pocket, come back the third week, and both pockets still have food in it, you abstain from feeding. Easy to remember. Also, a good reason to pocket feed is that it makes you cover the material. I know some people who like to feed right over the top, and that's fine if your bins are outside. Sometimes, you have fruit flies and all kinds of other flies that can get into the bin. And if your bins are outside, then it doesn't create as much of a problem as when your bins are inside. So covering up the food completely first of all, prevents smells, and second of all, deters the pests from entering. So that's all we are doing here. We covered it up, we fed it, and now we're going to put our marker. So our next feeding is going to be in there. Now, if I don't look in on this next week, I really won't know whether they finished it or not. So we'll see. I'm trying not to turn over the material, but I may look into the pocket just to make sure that the food is eaten, or the majority of the food is eaten. So although I will not be turning the bedding over, I still want to control the amount of food that is in here, and so I will probably have to remove some of the bedding to check on the condition of that feeding. Other than that, I will not be turning the material over, and we will leave it alone. So our experiment officially started, and we'll check on them next week and see how they do. Thanks for joining me.